Hey class, and welcome back. It's good to be with you all. I really enjoyed the Zoom that we had earlier this week, and I hope that you guys will be able to tune in on those each week that we do it. For next week, we will be doing it on Tuesday, the 14th, just so you can clear your schedule. Same time, 10 o'clock on Tuesday, so I look forward to seeing you guys then. But I'm excited to be with you. I kind of miss teaching, especially you guys in the classroom. I have been practicing this, but it's really not the same as the classroom. So I hope you guys enjoy it just as much. Um, I guess now you get to maybe relax in your bed or relax in your comfy clothes, maybe eat. I know we already eat in class. Sleep, hopefully not sleep. I know we sleep in class, but I hope that you'll be paying attention, and I hope that you guys will enjoy it just as much as in class. We'll be on 326. We're going to finish the chapter with Asian Russia. And it's interesting that we're labeling it European Russia and Asian Russia, but it's true. If we look at a map, you will see that Russia is huge. And I don't think we understand how big Russia actually is. Here it is touching the European countries. This is European Russia splitting off at the Ural Mountains. We're going to see that in our notes. But these are the Ural Mountains. We're going to see that many people will cross through. We're going to look at this town here. I have to first apologize for my Russian accent. Um, it's not very good. In fact, non-existent. So I'm going to try my best to get through these Russian cities, but as you can see, they're not necessarily the easiest. So I suggest you practicing them and seeing if you can beat me, which I'm sure all of you can, because my accent is not very good. But most of the cities, as you will notice, these major cities, we looked at St. Petersburg earlier, the capital Moscow. These major cities are all in European Russia. But we're focusing on Asian Russia. And notice the term for it is Siberia. We're going to mention some of these terms as we go along. Notice the Western Siberian lowlands. We're going to be looking at those, um, including the peninsula. And I don't want to get ahead of myself. So if you have to come back to this map, please do. But we're going to keep moving on through our notes. And I'd like you to feel free to take notes just like you would in class. This will help you on quizzes and the test coming up next week. I'll tell you specifically what day our test will be. Our test will be on Tuesday. So it'll be next class period is when we're looking at tests. Since we're finishing Russia today, our test will be on Tuesday. So you'll have all weekend to be getting ready for it. I'll be posting a review guide for you. But let's finish Russia now. One thing I want you to know about Russia is that it's huge, and with its size comes its resources as well. You see, Russia's supply of minerals far exceed the world. They're one of the greatest in the world. Notice aluminum, from zinc. We're going to see copper, bauxite. We're going to see all these resources that Russia has. The sad thing is, Russia does not necessarily take care of its resources like they should. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Now, comparing European Russia to Russia, Asiatic Russia is far, far less populated. We saw the cities earlier on the map, how there were fewer cities. In fact, very few people are going to live in the Asia side of Russia compared to the European side. So whenever we talk about Russia in our normal talking, like, oh, I can't believe Russia is doing that, or Russia's doing this, really we're talking about the government, but we're talking mostly the people of European Russia. Now, yes, the Asian Russia is still Russia. It's just most of the people are in European Russia. So let's talk about specifically Asian Russia, which starts past the Ural Mountains. Now, what's unique about the Ural Mountains is it's pretty low. They're not very high mountains, so they're fairly easy to navigate through. In fact, there are several passes that allow people to go through pretty easily. So the Ural Mountains separate European Russia from Asiatic Russia, but it's not a huge separation. It's a nice physical separation, but it's not like it's impossible to get over it. It's fairly easy. to get across. Now, you're going to have to forgive me with these names because these are not the easiest. But the two important cities, we're going to mention several cities throughout the lesson. But some major cities is, I'm going to try my best, Yekaterinburg and Chelyabinsk. Chelyabinsk. We'll go with it. Now, notice the population. I just have to say, I'm sorry, but can you imagine living in this city? Yeah, I live in the city of Miami. Miami is super easy to say. Why can't this be like Yekaterinburg? Yeah, I live in Yekaterinburg. Imagine writing a letter to this city. Talk about difficult just to say and let alone spell. Anyway, a lot of people do decide to live in the city. It's very um, populated. In fact, it's fourth largest in Russia. Now we're talking or Asian Russia. Now, if you notice back in the map, if you rewind me, which would be weird, but if you go back to that map, Yekaterinburg is in the Ural Mountains, or it's right on the base of the Ural Mountains. So it's not very far into the Asian Russia. I bring up this map to show you the weather regions. We're going to look mainly in the subpolar and the polar regions, the taiga and the tundra. So the taiga is cold, but it's not always cold. I want us to look at some of the stats on page 328, the very first paragraph, the second to last sentence and the last sentence. Second to last sentence says, the subpolar climate has freezing temperatures half the year, which drop -60 Fahrenheit, which I can't even believe. -60 Fahrenheit on occasion. And in the summer, highs as 100 Fahrenheit. This isn't Celsius we're talking about. We're talking 60 degrees Fahrenheit below freezing and 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Talk about drastic, and you think Miami is bad. Whenever it drops below 50 degrees, and we see 100 degrees, this is pretty insane. So this is in the Eastern Asian taiga countries. Now, the taiga area, I should say. I do want you to know this term, Siberia. This is really kind of all-inclusive of anything past the Urals, east of the Urals, Siberia. This was always the joke. You may have seen some shows that talk about shipping people off to Siberia and people always getting scared. It's because this is just a cold wasteland for the most part, at least in the northern part. Siberia is just anything east of the Urals, which oftentimes gets forgotten. But it does still have ties with the east. It's not totally forgotten. In fact, the major one is a Trans-Siberian Railway that you can see some of the trains that go through on 328, and you also see it here. They have to be equipped with the snow plow maneuver on the front. This one doesn't have it, but it's crossing some pretty harsh terrain, which the elevation that it goes across fluctuates quite a bit. But you're able to get supplies, talking about those resources again, from the east to the west European Russia. And the Trans-Siberian Railway is crucial. Continuing in Siberia, one of the largest plain, possibly the largest plain in the world, is the West Siberian Plain, with over 100 million square miles. And within this plain, we can find several natural resources. We're going to see petroleum become a major resource. We're going to see timber become another major resource. And because you have these major resources, you have to have people that gather it, which allows for cities like Novosibirsk. No, I messed up. See if you guys can do better. Novosibirsk, with 1.5 million people, which makes up the largest city in Siberia because of those natural resources that are being shipped off. Continuing with Siberia, we're talking about the plain. We're going to mention several of these peninsulas I want you to keep in mind. I want you to, the West Serbian Plain is very important, one of the largest in the world. But the Central Siberian Plain, you don't necessarily need to know. as important. It's not as important as the Western one, but this one is still fairly large and very rich in natural resources. In fact, most of it will be transferred down to the Timor Peninsula, which is the northernmost mainland of the world. Kind of interesting um, fact that Russia continues to have. Now, I thought this was cool. Altaia is especially interesting because it's between the four nations. Um, it's kind of like Four Corners. If you've ever been out west in our country, we have a very specific spot where four states come together to this one point, and you can stand on this point and you can say, I can see four states at one time, which is pretty cool. Um, I've been, and a lot of people like to take a picture with arm in one state, a hand in the other, a foot in a different state, and then your other foot in the other. So you can be in four states at one time. It's pretty cool. But here in the Altai, you can see the four countries at one point. You are surrounded by, I mean, you're in Russia. You can see China, Mongolia, and Kazakhstan. It's pretty cool. And within this region, you can find the highest peak, the Altai Mountains. Pretty easy to remember. There's one other mountain that I do want you to um, recall. This one I don't have on the notes. I do want you to make sure you follow along in your book on 329. You will want to know Lake Baikal. Lake Baikal is the deepest lake in the world. And what's amazing about this lake is we don't know much about it on the inside because it's so vast and we have a lot of different species that are living in this lake that are not found anywhere else in the world. Mainly because it does not connect to any other, it doesn't connect to the ocean. Uh, there's really no purpose for it except fishing and the resources that are there. But as far as traveling on it, there's not much travel because it won't take you very far. But it is known for its beauty and its vastness as the deepest lake in the world. I wanted to mention the Sakha, which is the world's harshest climate. Now, we were talking about negative 60 to 100. That's the kind of climate that we're talking about. And this one is even harsher than that, most extreme weathers. And the problem is that there is no natural boundary in Russia, the specific part of I'm sorry, Siberia, that doesn't stop the cold air from coming down from the Arctic. That's why we get the harsh climate like this in Sakha specifically and the rest of Siberia. That's why Siberia is so difficult to live in um, from the harsh climate. I mentioned this, the ethnic Yakuts speak Turkish language, and in fact, it almost seems like they're not Russian. Now, a third of the population does speak Turkish, so it's not the majority, but it is a large part of the minority takes a different language than the actual country. So, although these people are technically Russian, um, they're kind of their own ethnic group and kind of do their own thing. Now they're still governed the Russian government, but they they conclude their own culture, if you will. And as we're finishing up, we're almost done. We're getting all the way to the Pacific, and as we move close to the Pacific, we start running into Korea, China, Japan, and this can all be accessed through the Sakhalin Island and through this narrow channel. And this is really their last main um, source. In fact, you can see it on the map. You can see the Sakhalin Island up at the very northern part. Here we see China, Korea's. It actually touches Korea at the bottom, if you notice. We're very close to Japan as well. In fact, a lot of these islands are disputed. Japan wants to claim them. Russia claims them. It's like Russia doesn't have enough land already, but they both claim in the Comoro Islands. Last thing I want to mention about Russia is the closeness to America. In fact, they once claimed American land in Alaska and parts of California. So we've had a lot of Russian history, but we purchased Alaska from Russia, which was a very good buy because of the natural resources in Alaska. So we got to get some of it from Russia.